Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Dallas Turner is their first-round pick from 2 years ago. He is
The Minnesota Vikings 2024 season has become an absolute train wreck. And after watching Thanksgiving football, one painfully obvious question keeps haunting the Purple Faithful. What the hell happened to this team? Just 12 months ago, the Vikings were trading blows with the Detroit Lions in a 14-2 showdown, sweeping the Green Bay Packers and looking like legitimate Super Bowl contenders. Fast forward to today, and Minnesota sits at the absolute bottom of the NFC North barrel, watching their division rivals play a completely different brand of football while they struggle to execute the most basic offensive concepts known to modern football. The contrast couldn't be more stark or more infuriating. 5 minutes into the Packers-Lions Thanksgiving matchup, the gap between Minnesota and their division rivals became glaringly, almost comically apparent. Green Bay and Detroit were operating on an entirely different stratosphere, executing offensive schemes that looked effortless while the Vikings can barely string together competent drives. The question burning in every Vikings fan's mind is simple yet devastating. How did we fall this far, this fast in just one season? The answer, as uncomfortable as it might be for the organization to admit, starts and ends with offensive scheme problems that have plagued Kevin O'Connell's system all season long. While other teams were carving up defenses with simple, effective concepts, the Vikings have stubbornly refused to adapt, clinging to an overly complicated offensive philosophy that demands elite quarterback play without providing the support structure to make that quarterback successful. It's organizational malpractice disguised as innovative play calling, and it's destroying what should have been another competitive season in Minneapolis. Let's start with the most glaring, mind-boggling issue. The Minnesota Vikings simply do not run slant routes. Yes, you read that correctly. The most basic, vanilla, fundamental route concept in all of football, the route that gets taught in high school playbooks and drawn up in backyard turkey bowl games, is apparently too simple for Kevin O'Connell's sophisticated offensive system. This isn't hyperbole or exaggeration. When was the last time anyone saw Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison run a legitimate slant route? Think about it. Really rack your brain. The last memorable slant to Jefferson might have been back in Week 4 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, thrown by Carson Wentz early in that game. Since then, radio silence on one of football's most reliable concepts. Meanwhile, watching Thanksgiving football provided a masterclass in how other teams utilize this elementary yet devastatingly effective route. George Pickens absolutely torched the Cowboys secondary with 4 slant routes that accumulated 72 yards. These weren't just catch and fall down plays either. Pickens would catch the slant at 7 or 8 yards, use his elite yards after catch ability to turn upfield, and suddenly transform a simple concept into explosive 20 or 25-yard gains. It was surgical. It was effective. It was everything the Vikings refused to do. CeeDee Lamb was doing it. Rashee Rice was cooking defenses with quick slants. Even going back to previous games, players like Jamison Williams have been feasting on these short, quick passing concepts. These aren't revolutionary schemes requiring genius-level play design. These are fundamental football concepts that work because they get playmakers the ball in space with momentum, allowing their natural athleticism to create big plays. Yet somehow, inexplicably, the Vikings have decided that Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, 2 of the most talented receivers in the entire league, don't need these easy opportunities. The frustration multiplies when you consider what the Vikings have at their disposal. George Pickens, as talented as he is, might legitimately be one of the best number 2 receivers in NFL history this season. Pairing him with CeeDee Lamb creates an absolutely lethal combination. But here's the thing. Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson aren't so far below that level that they couldn't produce similar results with similar opportunities. The talent differential isn't the problem. The scheme is the problem. The philosophy is the problem. The stubborn refusal to simplify and get playmakers involved quickly is the problem. Watching Cowboys offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer get his playmakers the ball so easily, while Kevin O'Connell runs his receivers through elaborate route trees that require perfect timing and elite quarterback processing, made the contrast painfully obvious. Yes, the quarterback play has been absolutely awful this season. Yes, J.J. McCarthy's injury derailed the entire plan. Yes, Carson Wentz has been terrible. But you cannot absolve the coaching staff of responsibility when they refuse to generate easy looks for their best players. These are routes that J.J. McCarthy has been throwing since high school. These are concepts that should be layups, not advanced calculus. The infuriating part is that other teams make it look so simple. Jordan Love was throwing beautiful out routes early in the Packers game. Quick, decisive, effective. These aren't exotic play designs that require years of chemistry to execute. These are foundational football concepts that should be in every offensive coordinator's toolkit, especially when your quarterback situation is unstable and you need to manufacture easy completions to build confidence and rhythm. Kevin O'Connell himself acknowledged earlier this season that organizations fail quarterbacks just as much as quarterbacks fail organizations. That statement has never rung more true than it does right now in Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy certainly hasn't been helping matters, and neither did Carson Wentz before him, but O'Connell hasn't done his quarterbacks any favors either. The offensive scheme demands high-level processing, perfect timing on long-developing routes, and consistent protection that simply hasn't materialized. There's no safety net. There's no easy button. There's just complexity piled upon complexity, with the expectation that below-average quarterback play will somehow execute it flawlessly. The Cowboys game perfectly illustrated everything the Vikings are missing, watching Pickens and Lamb absolutely cook defensive backs off the line of scrimmage, making spectacular catches, and more importantly, getting placed in advantageous positions by their play caller to maximize yards after catch was a stark reminder of what modern NFL offense should look like. The Vikings, despite having elite receiving talent, are somehow not a good yards after catch team. That's not a talent problem. That's a scheme problem. That's a coaching problem. Then there's the tight end situation, which deserves its own paragraph of frustration. T.J. Hawkinson, who is somehow one of the highest paid players at his position, has been absolutely terrible this season. It's not an exaggeration to say there are 30 tight ends in the league performing better than him right now. He should not be on this roster next year, certainly not at his current salary figure. The Vikings are paying premium money for replacement-level production at a position that should be a safety valve for struggling quarterback play. The most damning observation is that Kevin O'Connell's scheme requires elite quarterback play to function, but provides none of the foundational support to help a struggling quarterback succeed. There's no robust run game to lean on. There are no quick-hitting concepts to build confidence. There's just the expectation that whoever lines up under center will make NFL-caliber throws on long-developing routes against NFL-caliber coverage. That's not coaching. That's hoping, and hope is not a strategy. Here's where things get interesting, though, and perhaps a glimmer of potential adjustment exists on the horizon. With Max Brosmer potentially entering the lineup, there might be forced scheme modifications coming. Brosmer is a quick-game quarterback. That's his archetype. That's the only way he'll be successful at the NFL level. Logic would suggest that Kevin O'Connell would have to implement more of these short, quick concepts to maximize whatever limited tools Brosmer brings to the table. But here's the concerning part. This is just who Kevin O'Connell is as a play caller. His entire offensive philosophy revolves around long routes down the field that make quarterbacks execute complex reads. It's not necessarily a bad approach when you have elite quarterback play, but when you don't, it becomes organizational suicide. The quarterback situation itself deserves extensive examination because it reveals just how far the Vikings have fallen and how questionable some of the organizational decision-making has been. The NFL is unquestionably a quarterback league. You need one to compete. It's that simple. Right now, the Minnesota Vikings have the worst quarterback room in the entire National Football League. That's not hyperbole. That's reality. Even teams like the New Orleans Saints with Tyler Siemian and Spencer Rattler are on a comparable level. That's where this organization currently resides after last season's success. The most frustrating element of the quarterback situation is the Sam Darnold debacle. Last season, Darnold provided competent, sometimes excellent quarterback play. He showed chemistry with Kevin O'Connell's system. He executed well enough that the Vikings were competitive in virtually every game. Then, inexplicably, the organization let him walk out the door. The justification was that they had spent a top 10 pick on J.J. McCarthy and needed to see what they had in their drafted quarterback. But Darnold was only 28 years old. Why not let him and O'Connell continue building for another year or two while McCarthy developed properly without the pressure of immediate starting duties? Watching Jordan Love on Thanksgiving, who has had his share of ups and downs throughout his career, but whom the Packers have consistently supported and developed, made the contrast even more painful. Green Bay stuck with their guy. They believed in him through the rough patches. They built around him. The Vikings had something similar cooking with Darnold, but abandoned it prematurely for a rookie who wasn't ready and has since been injured. Would Minnesota be 9-2 with Darnold this season? Probably not, but they sure as hell wouldn't be 4-7 either. 7-4 feels like a conservative estimate of where this team would be with merely competent quarterback play. The pain intensifies when you consider what the Vikings had last year and voluntarily gave up. High-end quarterback play is the hardest thing to acquire in the NFL. It's the most valuable commodity in professional sports. Minnesota had it, and they let it walk out the door. The rationale would be more understandable if all the money they spent in free agency had resulted in a stacked roster elsewhere. The signings of players like Hargreaves, Allen, Will Fry, and Ryan Kelly were supposed to elevate the supporting cast to championship caliber. If those players were all performing at Pro Bowl levels, you could understand the logic of sacrificing quarterback stability to build an elite roster around a developing rookie. But that's not what happened. Like, the roster isn't that good, and now they're getting terrible quarterback play on top of it. It's the worst of both worlds. Watching Thanksgiving football showcased exactly how wide the competitive gap has become. Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love, Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. These are the quarterbacks the Vikings watched carve up defenses with varying degrees of efficiency. How is Minnesota supposed to compete against that level of quarterback play with what they're trotting out there? The answer is simple. They can't. You cannot compete in the modern NFL without at least competent quarterback play, and the Vikings don't have even that baseline level of adequacy right now. This brings us to the crossroads moment facing the organization this offseason, and specifically the growing chorus of voices calling for the Vikings to pursue someone like Mac Jones. This would be an absolutely catastrophic mistake that would doom the franchise to years of mediocrity. The Vikings made their bet when they drafted J.J. McCarthy in the top 10. That was their swing. That was their big move. You don't get to take that mulligan after one injured season and settle for a game manager type who caps your ceiling at 9-8. There are only two legitimate paths forward for Minnesota. Option one, you ride this out with McCarthy. You give him a full offseason of development. You adjust the offensive scheme to maximize his strengths and minimize his weaknesses. You build the roster around him properly. Yes, this might mean another 4 or 5 win season next year. Yes, this flirts with the dangerous scenario where star players like Justin Jefferson start questioning their future in Minnesota. But you don't abandon a top 10 investment after 1 year, especially when that player never got a legitimate chance due to injury. Option two, you get ultra aggressive and swing big again. You draft another quarterback prospect with elite upside. You make a massive trade for someone like Trevor Lawrence or Anthony Richardson, players with incredible physical tools who haven't fully realized their potential yet. You take another shot at finding a franchise quarterback, accepting the inherent risk that comes with that pursuit. What you absolutely cannot do is settle for safe mediocrity with someone like Mac Jones. That's purgatory. That's 9-8 forever. That's wasting the prime years of Justin Jefferson and other elite talents on a roster that will never be good enough to truly compete. The Vikings organization has historically loved that middle ground space. They're comfortable being decent but not great, competitive but not threatening, relevant but not dangerous. That approach might keep fans engaged and sell tickets, but it doesn't win championships. It doesn't build dynasties. It doesn't create legacies. If the organization truly wants to compete at the highest level, they need to embrace the risk inherent in pursuing elite quarterback play, even if that means enduring some painful rebuilding seasons in the process. The broader frustration extends beyond just this season's failures. It's about watching the blueprint for success being executed by division rivals, while Minnesota stubbornly refuses to adapt. The Lions built methodically, found their quarterback, and are now reaping the rewards. The Packers developed Jordan Love properly and are back in contention. Even the Bears, despite their own struggles, are trying to build the right way around Caleb Williams. Meanwhile, the Vikings are stuck in organizational quicksand, unable to commit fully to either rebuilding or competing, resulting in this miserable middle ground where they're bad enough to miss the playoffs but not bad enough to secure premium draft positioning. Kevin O'Connell deserves significant criticism for this season's failures, but it's also important to maintain perspective. He's still a quality head coach who has shown the ability to maximize roster talent and create competitive teams. His scheme, when executed with proper quarterback play, can be highly effective. The problem is that he hasn't adjusted to the reality of his current situation. He hasn't simplified when simplification was desperately needed. He hasn't provided the safety nets and easy completions that struggling quarterbacks require. That's coaching malpractice, regardless of how innovative or creative the overall system might be. The debate over whether you'd rather have Brian Schottenheimer's offense or Kevin O'Connell's offense isn't even close right now, and that should terrify Vikings fans. Schottenheimer, who has been mocked and criticized throughout his career for being too conservative and predictable, is currently getting better results with better execution than O'Connell's supposedly cutting-edge system. The NFL is absolutely a "what have you done for me lately" league, and Kevin O'Connell hasn't done anything positive this season. He's had a bad year. The quarterback play has been awful, but that responsibility ultimately falls on the head coach too. O'Connell doesn't escape blame here. He's the one who decided to move on from Darnold. He's the one running this offensive scheme. He's the one responsible for the lack of quarterback development and in-game adjustments. What makes this all more frustrating is listening to other Vikings media personalities who seem content to blame everything on the quarterback situation without holding the coaching staff accountable. Yes, J.J. McCarthy got injured. Yes, Carson Wentz was terrible. But who decided to acquire these quarterbacks? Kevin O'Connell had significant input in those decisions. Who is responsible for developing and maximizing whatever quarterback play they have? Kevin O'Connell. The buck stops with the head coach. And right now, that buck is covered in losses and missed opportunities. The organizational philosophy moving forward will define the next decade of Vikings football. They can continue down this path of trying to compete annually while never quite having the quarterback play to get over the hump. They can settle for mediocrity with a game manager type who keeps them relevant but not dangerous. Or they can embrace the pain of a true rebuild, commit fully to developing McCarthy or finding the next franchise quarterback, and build something sustainable that can compete for championships rather than just playoff appearances. The talent exists elsewhere on this roster to be competitive. Justin Jefferson remains one of the best receivers in football. Jordan Addison has shown flashes of brilliance. There are pieces on defense that can be effective when properly utilized. But none of that matters without competent quarterback play and an offensive scheme designed to maximize whatever quarterback talent is available. Until those two elements are addressed, the Vikings will continue floating in this miserable middle ground, watching division rivals compete for Super Bowls while Minnesota fights for wildcard spots they probably won't even secure. The Thanksgiving slate of games provided crystal clear evidence of where the Vikings rank in the current NFL hierarchy. They're not in the conversation with the elite teams. They're not even in the conversation with the good teams. They're closer to the bottom than the middle, and that's after coming off a 14-2 season just 12 months ago. The fall has been swift, painful, and entirely avoidable with better organizational decision-making. As the Vikings prepare for their upcoming matchup, fans are left wondering if any meaningful changes will occur or if the organization will continue stubbornly down this failed path. Will Kevin O'Connell finally implement those simple slant routes and quick game concepts that work for literally every other team? Will there be any adjustment to help whoever plays quarterback actually succeed? Or will we see more of the same complexity and unrealistic expectations that have defined this lost season? The answers to those questions will determine not just the outcome of the remaining games this season, but the trajectory of this franchise for years to come. Vikings fans deserve better than what they're currently watching. They deserve an organization willing to learn from its mistakes, adapt to its circumstances, and make the difficult decisions necessary to build a legitimate championship contender rather than a perpetual mediocrity machine. What's your take on the Vikings' offensive struggles? When was the last time you remember seeing Jefferson or Addison run a simple slant route? Should the team ride it out with McCarthy or make another aggressive move at quarterback? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that like button if you're as frustrated as the rest of Vikings Nation, and subscribe for more coverage as this season continues to spiral and we look ahead to what promises to be an absolutely critical offseason. Let's go Vikes, even when it hurts to say it.